between yourselves, we have been so educated today about the situation, and I wish you could take your show on the road to show everybody the misinformation that we know that has been going on about the situation in Niger. And now we're going to move to a speaker from the other end of the world. My family are from Ghana, and one thing that a lot of visitors come to Ghana, and a lot of friends from other places in the world. We take them to visit those former encampments and castles where enslaved people were taken before they were trafficked. And one thing that always bothered me when I took the time to educate myself about the trafficking and enslavement of African peoples is how little we are talking even now about the situation in Brazil and about the African peoples that were taken to Brazil, because there are more people trafficked to Brazil than all of the other places combined. And yet the story of African peoples in Brazil is rarely told and really understood worldwide. So I'm very pleased to introduce our next speaker, Ribeiro-Addy. He is from Afro-ID, and she's going to be speaking to us about reparatory justice and perspectives from Quilombos in Brazil. Thank you.
Thank you so much for inviting me today. It's an ancestral honor. Thank you, Robina, for this moment, for Ribeiro, and my sister Issa, and our community here, and my sisters from Portugal, from Cape Verde, Guinea-Bissau, Angola, and here to come to talk about this Brazil situation is very connection because Portugal colonized Brazil. I talk here today about the Brazil history. I represented to Afro-ID organization, this Afro-Brazilian organization, to talk about to embrace our identity. To people in Brazil to know who the Africa is the war place, the mother place. And I talked to the OMA of 3880 in Brazil. It's the last country, the Americas, to formally abolish slavery. Brazil has the second largest black population in the world. It was 119 million people of African descendants. Columbus is one place of protection and security for African people during the slavery period. Even though in the 21st century, the Quilombolas still fight for possession of their land. The one case for shocked was about the leader, the Mãe Bernadette Pacifico. She was leader of the Quilombos in Bahia. Bernadette, mother, it's a mother of the night of August 17, with more than 10 shots for her face. She was in her house in the Quilombos territory, and her son Binho, the Quilombo, was killed because he's protecting the Quilombos land. And she was killed because she's asking for justice for her son, the protected of the Quilombos land too. Brazil Ways has a project of genocide against black and indigenous people. As for example, the government of Bahia did not protect the life of the mother Bernadette Pacifico, who were under state protection. Also, murder of Marielle Franco, Miguel Otávio years old, and every 23 minutes, one young black man died in Brazil by police brutality or because they don't have any justice, social justice, and for protecting his life. Quilombolas' lands are rich in the natural resources, and that's why there is a struggle for the Quilombos indigenous people for to have legal rights to own those lands. The lack of recognition from the government will legally give the rights of the land to Quilombolas, indigenous people, give evidence of the institutional racism, continue the violence and injustice by the Brazilian state. We demand here today for reparation, security, healthy, economic, education, political, and the justice system. I have here one example about the British Empire, because long after the abolition of slavery in the British colonies, one of the resource bank of today, Lloyd's Bank Group, knowingly held enslaved Afro-Brazilians as security against its loans, sometimes forcing Versailles to settle debts. Contrary to the popular belief, the case of London and the Brazilian Bank shows that Britain involved in slavery did not end in 1833. It simply took the different forms in the different places, like slavery today, the racism problem, the institution racism, and this global problem in the world. Brazil was colonized by Portugal, but this is one example of the British Bank demonstration. They are involved in slavery together. You want reparation from the Portuguese state to return health to Brazil, Angola, Cape Verde, Guinea-Bissau, African indigenous artifacts have belonged to our countries and they must be returned. Also, the black population demands this time for us, it is so important for us to demand about one black progressive minister to be on the Supreme Court, representing the black population in the Brazil, because President Lula must be the actor, because he spoke, he have a good speech in the world, but when he needs change the situation in Brazil, they continue maintain the white privilege. And you are demanding today for the black progressive minister to be on the Supreme Court, because President Lula begin to act and prepare the black Brazilian people, and you want reparation now. You want to restore our dignity and humanity in Brazil. And you want to talk about the ancestors, Zumbi of dos Palmares, Dandara dos Palmares, Teresa de Benguela, and our ancestors who was killed by Brazilian government. And you are the ones and stop me, Madam. Thank you.
From Brazil, and also to make a very important point that our political leaders need to do more than talk when it comes to delivering. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm now going to hand over to Dr. Gail Bradbrook, who's going to be speaking to us about the new abolitionism and its catalysing of the People's Reparations International movement. And Dr. Bradbrook.
It's almost 5 years that Extinction Rebellion declared rebellion against the UK government outside here in Parliament Square. And of course we've not succeeded in our aims, and I now know, and the key to why I'm here speaking with you today, is that the primary reason we have failed, along with the rest of the global North environmental movement, is our innate belief that the global North will save the world. In fact, the learned feeling that we must we are the saviours after all, and so to address the crises we are in, we can simply pressurise global North governments to better policies, but this is the only viable route for global change. It's this Eurocentricity that's currently turning a blind eye to the amazing climate leadership in Colombia under the Petro Marquez government. Their work and statements go largely unrecognised in our Eurocentric environmental movement, when we should be shouting their leadership from the rooftops. But of course, such shouting would be to begin placing us no longer on top of the pyramid, but among our global family, something that seems so obvious, and yet the whiteness we're trained into fights tooth and nail to stay at the centre of the story. Personally, I have learned this as part of building the XR-BCAN affinity network alongside my majority world colleagues such as Esther and Kobina, who spoke earlier, and others such as Kina Rathor and Kofi I will include. Joining this family has been, and of course still is, a huge challenge to my own learned Eurocentricity. And we've created XR-BCAN affinity network to bring others on this action learning journey. A journey that clearly names the crisis not simply as a climate and ecological crisis, but more truthfully as the rapacious, white supremacist global political economy. It's a cannibalistic imperial system that's the root cause of the collapse that we're in.
True. Yes, thank you.
A collapse that is social, economic, political, and is starting to be felt even here at the heart of empire in the so-called cost of living crisis, and that 40,000 people here die in so-called excess deaths recently. We name loudly that it is this diseased culture of stress and fear that has long been a breeding ground for authoritarian divide and rule responses whenever challenged. Global North tactics to maintain the status quo take place in the form of embargoes, in the supply side, a provision of corruption services that the City of London is at the heart of globally, and the destabilising of local industry, and the direct murder of progressive leaders across the global south.
True.
Notably this year, it is 50 years since the West instigated a coup in Chile, and 70 years since the coup in Iran, with countless interventions in between and since. As we've learned, the West especially seeks to overthrow those who would choose to use their own natural resources for the benefit of their own people. Gaddafi would be a significant African example of that, and the suffering of Libyan people right now, with the impacts of climate change, can be linked directly to the chaos in the country created by the West.
True.
And in this, I name our Eurocentric movements as directly complicit. Yes? So even in my own movement, Extinction Rebellion, the current major uprisings that we've been hearing about today in the Sahel are largely unseen and ignored. A white supremacist attitude that sadly is reflected internally in the attempted dismantling of our XR internationalist solidarity networks, except we're not going to accept that. The only group in XR UK who have attempted to build bridges between such movements and ourselves. I say we are complicit because we know that this blindness has long allowed the imperial eradication of global South progressive forces without any mass challenge in the West. And unless we change our ways, we will soon see our hands bloody as the West attempts to reassert its domination again. This is the disconnection in the global family that we here are raised into and asked to continue. A self-congratulatory story that means even in the face of structural oppression and climate meltdown, there is little momentum behind seeking to create peoples-to-peoples unity. This very unity that is essential if here in the global north we're to avoid a descent into eco-fascism and a descent that those in power are already paving the way for. Without addressing this disconnection head-on and instead continuing these fruitless attempts to convince power to change, the movement in the global north will not just be ineffective, but will be in fact directly enabling this rising authoritarianism and eco-fascism. So we understand that new abolitionists are people that understand this division across our human family. We know the historic roots of this division and how it is actively maintained in the present. We understand that the systems of domination are extractive, live around us, live within us and between us, and we cannot face together the multiple catastrophes without first centering the repair of these divisions. New abolitionists understand that this is the true meaning of reparations, and that only through uniting can we build a repaired world. And of course we know this begins with backing the continued resistance of our global South family and their communities of resistance in their intergenerational fight for life. We know that they are our best allies in saving what we can of the Earth's life support system, because that's where the majority of the extraction of fossil fuels, etc., are taking place. We know that to join them here in the global north, we have to build economies of degrowth, relearn common aim and cooperation, and struggle to provision for ourselves with high-quality, universal basic services, so that this story of divide and rule, whereas money is to be handed over and we haven't got enough money here, we sweep that inside in favour of universal basic services here that we provide for ourselves in solidarity with the needs met of our family across the world. This also means fighting fascist tendencies in our communities, reclaiming our stories of resistance, and that it means working for self-sufficiency, as we can no longer live off the oppression of our global family. New abolitionists are people who recognise these needs, and the only chance we have of achieving this is through our siblings uprising in the global south, that as they take back their land and resources, as is happening in Niger at the moment, that as they repudiate odious debts and create a multipolar world, they break the Eurocentric lies of disconnection and superiority. Before I hand on to my young colleague, Robin, wrong side of 30 actually, to elucidate the practical work we're already doing, I want to finish by centering this word whiteness, not as it wishes to be centred, but as it truly is, as a pathology. In XR-BCAN, we use the term Wetiko whiteness, Wetiko being a cross-indigenous peoples term of the northeast of so-called North America, and the Dogon term Yorubu, to name the insatiable greed that's at the heart of whiteness. A greed and emptiness that is a potential within all of us, a potential realised when our fear of not being enough, of not having enough, overshadows our ability for collaboration and love. We name this as whiteness because the white culture that elite Europeans birthed contained no ancestrally white stories, such as Wetiko or Yorubu, to warn us against this tendency. We may see, though, that the elites actually are represented now in our cultures as vampires, and that our numbness as people racialized as white, you might think of as these stories of zombies. So it's a culture, no, it's a pathology that celebrates this cannibalistic and self-centered overconsumption. As such, our use of the word whiteness both describes the systems of racialized oppression around us and within us, and directly challenges those of us who are racialized as white to come out of these states of disassociation, denial, and disconnection. These states induced by numbing imperial comforts and unacknowledged privileges that hide our true identity as human beings and responsibilities as part of the human family. This reawakening that our colleague Stina Rathore names as co-liberation asks us to notice and recover our humanity through practices of what Resmaa Menakem has called somatic abolitionism, practices of the body to be felt within the body and liberated within the body. As co-liberators, we're asked to stop ignoring the white supremacist dynamics playing out across the world and within our movement. Some of us call it white glazing, the glazing over when we aren't the centre of the story. As new abolitionists, we're tasked to think about our individuality to the systemic, and thus to lift the bonnet even on the depravity at the heart of the story of how we even became to be white. To remember the trauma and the harm that the elites visited upon us before they enslaved our family, to remember the witch burnings and the enclosures, the vagrancy brandings, and how they murdered our resistance fighters. We must remember because we have been made to forget. In our forgetting, we have normalised the role they have forced us to play in their paradigm of domination. We lost our ways, our stories, her stories and his stories, and in such lostness, we lose our very selves, our humanity, are dismembered, as we are infected with this viral sickness of Wetiko whiteness and tasked to enforce this barbarity. And yet, called into our humanity by our global family, we do remember. We remember the Rebecca riots. We remember Ket's rebellion. We remember the Stroudwater riots in my own town. And we remember when, united with the uprisings of our global family, we moved en masse to abolish the transatlantic trafficking in enslaved Africans. We remember, and in these beginnings of our repaired dignity and sovereignty as Europeans, beyond the pathology of whiteness, we as new abolitionists look to take our first steps as part of the People's Reparatory International Movement and towards planet repairs. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's always very special, I think, to hear allyship in its truest form. We have many, many people who, particularly over the past few years, have claimed to be allies, who claim that space and make certain statements and just go right back around and dictate to us what it is that we should be doing. So always very pleased to hear this statement. Thank you very much. We're going to be handing over to Robin, who's going to talk in more detail about what has been done by XR. Thank you, Robin.
Thank you, Val. Thank you, Gail. And thank you to everyone who's shared today, brothers and sisters, and for this invitation to speak here as part of the APPGAR and this process. My name is Robin Ellis Cockcroft. I'm a child of Stroud's Hills, the same valley that Gail was talking about, but my heritage lies in the north in the Dales of Yorkshire and in the coastal farmland of Cornwall, better known as Kerno in the language that my ancestors would have spoken. I join you today as part of the coordination circle of Prayer, alongside Goblin and Marina, as a founding member of XR-BCAN with others on the table, of XR Youth, and a long-standing member of XR-XN. And it falls to me to crystallise the framing that Gail has given us for this label of new abolitionist, and to explain how it works towards the role of what we are calling the PRIM, and what we've been invited to join alongside the ISMA, the International Social Movement for African Reparations, to create this overarching group, the PRIM, the People's Reparations International Movement, to include the reparation struggles of all peoples, and in this situation I'll be delving into the reparation struggles of my own people, and how together, in that shared struggle, we can move forward. So where Gail has finished, I will start with the abolitionists of old. The clearest moment when masses of my people here, compelled by the uprisings of our enslaved African kin, rose to abolish what was at the time the sick prize at the heart of the British elites, the absolute underpinning of our economy. Thousands of petitions, hundreds of societies and groups, national and international conferences, Robert Wedderburn's axe laid to the root, Granville Sharp and Thomas Clarkson's deep friendship and solidarity with Olaudah Aquinas that shaped the movement. People, children boycotted sugar in their tens of thousands, from school canteens to the streets of Leicester, where Elizabeth Hayrick got 25%, 1/4 of her entire city involved, before she went on to champion immediate abolition so loudly that William Wilberforce, who across the street claims credit for the abolition movement, himself tried to silence her. None of which I had any idea about growing up, even though my school archway is named after the only monument erected at the time to celebrate abolition. If education is preparation for reparations, then what my school gave me was miseducation for domination and disconnection. And So we have started here, and through the prayer process, we are reclaiming the right to this education and to rejoin this legacy of resistance. We name this as the first tenet of our new abolitionism, knowing that we must ground ourselves here in the abolition of old. If we, as Marcus Garvey says, are going to move forward not as a community that is still a tree without roots, but instead in our full peoplehood. In this work of reclaiming our history from below, our stories, not his story, we have been quickly and vitally shown in equal measure our miseducation sought to gloss over the brutal violence and genocide that was the transatlantic trafficking in enslaved Africans, that was the British Empire, that was the fetid heart of every boarding school program set up to destroy cultures and separate young people from their people and their land. All of these were glossed over. Here we are working hard to own the harm, knowing that we can continue to hide from these brutal truths, then we will never allow ourselves to overstand how that we arrived in this situation. Without owning this harm historically, and how it persists and continues to devastate our world in the present, we, racialized as white, will never join yourselves fully in this true abolition. For our gaze, the white glaze that Gail talked about, will cling to whiteness, mistruths, and navel-gazing. And we will continue, as you see so often and you call us out for, we will seek easier or even often false strategies that will never truly transform the world. And so we must own the harm. And of course, so instead, as new abolitionists, our historic understanding clearly shows that we must abolish nothing short of the entire system of neocolonial domination and extraction. A system that means no matter how I choose to live here in the UK, my life will mean death for siblings in the global south and the modern human world.
Absolutely.
A situation that compels me and must compel me into action every day. A clarion call that what is cannot continue. And that our first step together must be, as Auntie Esther says, to stop harm. We cannot repair our society when it is built on these wounds. When the blood of my African siblings still drips from the coltan in my phone, these are the systems of disrepair and domination that must be dismantled and abolished. We are ever to protect ourselves, our community, and the world. A first step process that is the very essence of PRIM building. Us coming together across these force divisions to build a People's Reparations international movement capable of truly stopping the harm and winning planet repairs. We are humbled to be invited to this table, and we see deeply the Ubuntu heart of this that knows no true African, no Pan-African reparatory struggle can be won without the rest of the human family's equal return to dignity. We see the immense and powerful work you all of the international social movement for African reparations. You have paved the way for the road that we now wish to walk alongside you. I name my colleague Kofi Mwali-Klue here as a true elder, who knows more of my people's stories than I do, who has shouted the white boy liberalism right out of my arse, and who despite vicious racism within our white movement, has never stopped seeing the humanity buried in me and my people. It is relationships like this, and the ones we form with you all, that the system is terrified of. Relationships that teach us to break from whiteness's lie, that transformation would mean an exchanging of poles, an usurpation of the role of dominator, and to know that no, Pan-African reparations and planet repairs truly means the building of a multipolar world, that we have nothing to lose here and an awful lot to repair, especially if we as communities and not just isolated individuals are to join this struggle. This is the work I'm coming from today, where in my hometown we're building a project called System, shrouded in internationalist solidarity together for earth repairs. We're bringing back together the elements of our village. The youth who are challenging miseducation, the old folk wanting to reignite elderhood, the teachers, the parents and more. We've liberated a building and we held our own summer school to begin action learning what a planet repairs curriculum might look like. We've hosted global sessions on reparations, we've screened the film African Apocalypse and learned from our siblings in Niger. We've most recently had a dialogue, cousin Marina came in to talk about Indigenous Peoples Resistance Day. And through all of this global work, we're together beginning to ask again, not as individual people, but beginning as a people to ask how can we become a powerful sister again in the global family of resistance. Powerful being a central word because one of the ways we are failing the global family failing you all is that we are scared here to run our own lives. As such, it has been essential for us to learn from and amplify people's justice processes from across the world in our learning. From the building of the Alto Calmacali in Mexico and the Otomi's reclamation of the INPI in Mexico City, we are learning that people's tribunals must act if they are to be respected and defended. The Stop the Maangamizi, We Charge Genocide Ecocide campaign has taught us to see and name crime scenes for what they are here and across the world, and to know that no one will shut them down if we don't, and to rise to that challenge. And of course, we hear the challenge of our siblings, that our siblings are laying down right now to neocolonialism in the Sahel. We see the youth stepping into their power, and we are compelled to dream of launching our own equally powerful resistance. Through our prayer work, we're seeing how you even raise your children, your future leaders. How with initiatives like the MAT Ubuntudunia, Global African Family Reunion International Council, you're continuing and reasserting your people's right to educate and raise your youth. An assertion that here, in my community, is tragically lacking, with millions of our youth simply turned over every day to the crime scenes that are our schools of miseducation. And so we return to the knowledge that if education is preparation for reparations, and that if we are here to join frame building work en masse, our work as new abolitionists must begin with an educational revolution and the reclamation of our rights to educate our young people. And finally, before I begin to conclude, we know as new abolitionists, and Belle even mentioned this when she introduced us, as prim builders, that we must cultivate staying power in this solidarity struggle. That as we walk this road, it forces bread into us through whiteness, as Gail has talked about, and from those desperate across the street to cling to power will seek to divide us from you, to sever our growing relationships, and especially to invite us back, us white folk, back into the fetid embrace of whiteness. But we cannot convince you today that we will stay the course. That will be proved on the journey.
Yeah.
And all we can say today is that we know many have abandoned you in the past, but we know this struggle is lifelong. We know this is lifelong learning, and we're in this to win this, people. So I'll leave you with these tenets of new abolitionism that we must ground our movement in. We must ground in our stories of rebellion, the abolitionist movement that came before, to overstand the neo-colonial death machine that is our globalized economy and how it was violently historically created. To emphasize that without stopping the harm, no reparations can begin. To co-build alongside yourselves the PRIM, knowing this must be centered on Pan-Afrikan reparations, but including our own need for reparations. And through fighting hand in hand to build this multipolar world, we will join you in defending everyone's reparatory victories at every step of the way. To amplify the power and dignity of our global family's resistance and allow it to call our own power forth, to resist miseducation and reclaim the right to educate our youth as the foundation of our repair. And finally, to reintegrate that this is a lifelong struggle, and we will prove our commitment every day. I want to finish with 4 really quick acknowledgements. Firstly, to the others now reigniting abolitionists, we see your struggles against prison, against the police and more. We are here to join you in this fight, and together take aim not at a piece of the puzzle, but at the whole extractivist death machine. Secondly, we acknowledge all of our African kin who have struggled against the Maangamizi and for reparations. All those who lost their lives, their lands, their languages and their sovereignty. Those who still lie stolen in cellars in this country and in our museum. And those still fighting. And all of the victories that have been made. Their shoulders, your shoulders, are the ones that we all stand on. Thirdly, we acknowledge those who have fought before us here in this lineage of abolition and alongside yourselves. Sylvia Pankhurst, Basil Davidson, June Milne, Jesse Donaldson, Joseph Sturz, Lydia Harding, and countless others, it is into their step that we tread. And finally, we acknowledge and champion this new wave of people's uprisings across the Sahel and West Africa. In Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali, Guinea, and far beyond, these are the enslaved people's rebellions of our modern day. And in shutting the chains of neocolonialism, they are again offering us all a glimpse of freedom, the possibility of repair, and the certainty that the world will never be the same again. Thank you.
so I didn't interrupt you as you.
Yeah, we're way over time, sorry.
We're way over time, no, but as I said, it is really, really special to hear allies speaking the truth in the way that you have. So thank you so much, and thank you for that commitment to continue learning. We are plagued by people who pick up one book and think that they have all the answers, and then like to tell us what it is that should be done. So that commitment to continue learning, to continue working is so important. We are going over time, and at some point you may see me disappear, because sometimes people want me to be in more than 3 places at once. But before I do that, I'm going to hand over to our next speaker, a brilliant student activist who I've heard speak before myself, Marina from, make sure I get the organisation right, MWeCGEC, and she was doing international solidarity and the relevance of the Pan-African Medium reparations to the global struggle for planet repairs. Marina.
Thank you, Belle. Thank you, everyone here. It's honestly an honor to be here. I want to first thank our uncles, aunties, really, because without the guidance, I think we wouldn't be where we are right now, with the understanding and really it's the African movement for reparations that has given us the opportunity to even understand how to conceptualize African reparations in our own context, in our own continent. Anyway. Today, across the world, we are witnessing a process of reparations unfold before our eyes. We are witnessing the birth of a new humanity, clear about their rights, our collective rights to a repaired world. And with it, we are living the transformation of a people that for 531 years have been taught to be faithful, have been taught to be submissive, and accustomed to an impoverished world, not only drained of its resources, but where dignity and life have been squeezed from its veins, where our people have been taught that they have nothing to contribute to this world, no knowledge, no history, and no culture. But today, the realities of this decadent system that has cost us the lives of so many of our brothers, sisters, and siblings, that has cost us our rivers, our waters, our mountains, and the flourishing of all life, is compelling all colonized people globally to stand once again in their full power and humanity, with the knowledge that together we have the capacity to transform that reality, and it is through the recovery of all that we have lost that we will begin to live again. As we witness our freedom-fighting brothers and sisters in Niger, in Mali, and Burkina Faso struggling to take back their land from French imperialism, and who are building Pan-African reparations, or as we see the Nawa people of Santa Maria Osula and the Mayan communities of Chiapas reclaim their territories and build autonomy, or as we see the Betowo, Hausa, Ovaherero, Nama, Maori, Mapuche, Quechua, and Aymara peoples push for plurinational indigenous self-governance and to redefine the borders that imprison them, or the students of the Escuelas Normales Rurales that form a part of the FEXA, they currently struggle for an education that works in service of the people, or as we see the people of Sudan, of Haiti, of Peru, of Pakistan, of Yemen, and Palestine struggle for sovereignty and self-determination. Ripples are being spread into the hearts and minds of all of our colonized people globally, and the restoration of our humanity is being intensified. Because each meter of land that we are reclaiming, each transnational company that we are expropriating, each imperialist military base that we are expelling, each intercultural school or university that we are building up, furthers us on our journey for self-repairs and for planet repairs. And each of these acts are securing our rights as a people, rights that are outlined in international laws, which are our rights to life, to self-determination, and to sovereignty. So we can take these actions knowing that words like national and social liberation that these colonial governments have tried to call terrorism are actually programs for our people's and Mother Earth's rights to be restored, and thus programs of reparations. And it is with this understanding that we see the hypocrisy of white supremacist imperialism so clearly, because while NATO right now condemns the invasion of Ukraine, They forget that these powers invaded, colonized and partitioned Africa, Abiyala, Asia, Oceania and also Europe, and that they trafficked and enslaved tens of millions of African people, that they crewed and invaded Guatemala, Ghana, Iraq, Afghanistan and Libya, that they assassinated Patrice Lumumba, Thomas Sankara, Salvador Allende, Mohamed Mossadegh, Maurice Bishop, Berta Cáceres, and countless others of our freedom fighters, that they maintain Cuba currently under an economic blockade. They launched a supposed war on drugs and a war on terror that has sown nothing but death and destruction into our communities. They have imposed a neoliberal program of austerity that has attacked all of our peasant, indigenous, and working class peoples, leaving our communities in ruins and our children without youth centers or food banks. And so now, as they try to recruit our people to fight in their wars, when they want our people to shed on their blood on their behalf, we must unequivocally deny and push for a dignified life and a just peace in all our territories first, because our historical memory remains intact and very much alive. And we maintain that historical memory as an act of survival, because as the water on our continent becomes more scarce and the living conditions worsen, it is the unconditional love for life that is pushing our communities into taking reparations into their own hands. And that scares these imperial powers to the core, because whilst they have created dependency in our continent, they too have become dependent upon our resources.
Yeah.
And we know, as they have done before, that they will go to war to continue extracting all they can from our lands to ensure their parasitic survival. And that is why internationalism is required for true reparations, and why all peoples have a case to bring as parties of People's Reparations International Movement, because in order for us to repair as a people, we must first heal ourselves and our relationship with our global human family and our Mother Earth, our Pachamama, which requires taking leadership from the struggle of African reparations. We must feel in our bodies that an injustice carried out anywhere is an attack against our humanity everywhere, and we must build up internationalist power bases to counter it, as it's the only way we will secure our victories. And we must recognize that so-called privileges like whiteness or class status are really bribes of imperialism to maintain our complicity and erase our humanity. We have a duty as a people to remember what we have lost. We must recover and put legitimacy behind our histories, our community institutions, knowing that our people have the capacity to govern themselves and determine what is just and unjust, and we have a duty to our ancestors and our future generations to take back our lands and restore all love for life. Across the world, we are in a time of awakening and of knowledge co-production and recuperation. In our colonized communities across the world, people's tribunals are being set up at the local level to judge the Maangamizi crime scenes that suffocate them, like the Ubuntudunia People's Tribunals. And one day, these local tribunals will come together and we will try the criminals, like those that have sat in these houses of parliament, in our international courts. And we will fashion our own version of the Nuremberg trials and implement our people's justice as an act of reparations. This is why the call on all people of this world to take part in this internationalist educational revolution in service to our peoples and Mother Earth is now as strong as ever. We must make an active effort now to learn about our different contexts, the different languages that we use to articulate our struggles, the different freedom fighting efforts and planet repairs initiatives that are taking place in our different territories, in our different countries, in our different continents. And we should be holding up the banners, symbols and names and faces of our different resistance forces in our community centers, homes and schools, and bringing reparations inquiries in all contested zones like this one in order to effectively unify our people's power throughout the global majority towards the emancipation of our colonized communities and nations against all forms of colonialism, imperialism, genocide and ecocide, and to rebuild our global human family. With every attack that imperialism wages, we will only gain more consciousness and step into the struggle to reinstate the power of our humanity, because an inevitable tide is now in motion that will not be stopped. We know that we will not surrender, we know that we will not sell out, and most importantly, we trust that our people and our humanity will win. We will win the reparations that we build, the cognitive reparations, the cultural reparations, the social reparations, the economic reparations, the political reparations, the educational reparations, the people's reparations, and the reparations of our Mother Earth as we build Ubuntudunia, a multipolar world of global justice, or a world in which many worlds fit. This is a statement from the Majority World Internationalist Coordinating Council of Communities of Resistance. Today in the Houses of Parliament, in criminal institutions, that now we are contesting the zone as a territory for our communities to begin to really articulate and harmonize their people's efforts for true internationalist solidarity.
Thank you, Marina. So we just have Marina and Robert Ellis Cockcroft and Gail Bradbrook and Ribeiro Youth, which has really extended today's platform to look into the internationalist dimension of African reparatory justice and see the connections between all of our struggles. We now, if they are here, we'll hear from Mr. Bashir Abdi. Yes, it'll be Mr. Bashir Abdul, Mr. Bashir Said, So this is a final contribution from the Nigerian diaspora community.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity to tell you guys about Niger and what Niger is going through right now. I just came here to support Dr. Dylan and Mr. Kader, to be honest. I didn't come with a plan to make any speech. Because everyone has said so many important things that are so educational, and which have enlightened, in a way, our knowledge of our history, our background, liberation, and what we are fighting for. But what is happening in Niger right now is so alarming, and I think it's a kind of awakening movement that any Pan-African or people with African blood or people supporting the cause of Africans should be watching, keep an eye, and try to get a kind of, being inspired by it, I may say. Just to add on top of what Kader and Dr. Pilar has just said, if you look at France's attitude towards Africa, and in particular, African French colonies, they look at them with how you say it, like they patronize us in a way. That's how they say it. So, and they're full of contradictory. So I think I'm going to just recall a couple of French presidents' speeches, whereby they've made some statements that really reflect the attitude of French, political leaders towards Africans. It wasn't a long time ago. Macron has recently said that the conflict between Azerbaijan and Armenia is not acceptable and has to stop immediately. At the same time, he's supporting a war in Niger, which has been supported and pushed, and French are basically planning to support it militarily as well as intelligence. So that's a big contradiction. If you don't want war between two other countries because they're just European countries, why would you want to support a war in Africa between brothers? Because these are basically the same people speaking the same language, the same culture, the same economic area. So France is supporting that intervention in Niger so that Bazoum can be brought back into power. Once again, he was saying that the Armenians, you remember very well when he was saying Armenians were, there was a kind of genocide against them by the Turkey. He was saying that that's a kind of history that they're supposed to be celebrating all the time, and the French people are fully backing them in terms of denouncing the genocide. But at the same time, he's asking the African people to forget about colonization. Because he's saying he himself is a kind of generation who has never witnessed colonization. And most of the current African people have never witnessed colonization. Therefore, African people should forget about colonization. Could you see the contradiction and the double standard between that France is particularly doing in Africa? And another intervention that has really, frustrated so many Africans was the one of Sarkozy in Senegal. I don't know if any of you guys have witnessed that. What he was saying, the problem of Africa is because the Africans have not entered into the world history, have not entered enough into the world history, meaning we haven't contributed. We are just basically subject. Animals. So, and he was saying that in Africa, on African soil, in Dakar, confidently, as if he was saying the truth and people are buying into it. So that's how they behave, the French leaders when they addressing the African people and even the African president. Just to go on, we all know, it wasn't a long time ago, the IMOA, which is basically the monetary body governing the West African countries, members of the ECOWAS organization, they tried for several years to put in place a common currency to get rid of the CFA, the franc CFA, which is basically a historical colonial currency, the Naira in Nigeria, or the cedis in Ghana. They've been working on that for years. They came to a point where they got a name for that common currency, and let's say that in a kind of final steps of finalizing the project, and all of a sudden, because Macron has just realized that this is a project which is about to be implemented successfully, and is going to play against the French economy and influence in Africa. Because remember, for those people who have been following the news, France has been getting a hell lot of money from using the franc CFA currency. They would never allow that currency to go peacefully. They're going to fight for it. So they just, Macron has just basically hijacked the initiative of getting a common currency by working with Ouattara, President Ouattara of Ivory Coast, who is one of the biggest puppets of France in West Africa right now. So just the two of them, they stand on a podium declaring that the currency, the franc CFA, because people have been so much complaining about it, they said they're going to rename the franc CFA ECO, which basically the name, the UMA, let's say the ECOWAS countries are trying to put as a common name for the currency they put in place. That has so frustrated so many African leaders, including former African presidents like Rawlings in Ghana. It's so infuriating. So that's the attitude of France in West Africa. So that's really what is prevailing most of the African people, let's say the current generation, the young people, and they're fully educated, I may say, in terms of the strategy or the way or the routes that France is basically using to get his, to maintain his power over our countries and they still maintain those leaders as puppets for the interest of France. So I think that's all I want to mention to support what you guys have said, and the struggle that we're facing against the terrorism right now, you all know the source. Macron being the leading force in terms of getting rid of Gaddafi in Libya, supported of course by Macron and President Obama. So they got rid of Gaddafi, and that's it, they could not control the after Gaddafi. And that has basically created that terrorism we're facing in the Sahel region now. So basically it's a kind of terrorism who has been made by human, by France, I may say, supported by some of the Western countries. So if they're honest with what they're saying, that they want to get rid of terrorism, and they're supporting the African countries, which is basically not a support. They're just basically coming to rectify the error that we made. They couldn't do it. Reason why they got fed up of the military presence in Africa and trying to get rid of it in Africa, because they realized that all that they're doing there is to try to get the military power in place so that they can intimidate the local people or the local army not to overthrow those corrupt puppet regimes that they put in place. I'm not going to abuse of your time. There's a lot to say, but I think people have said most of what should be discussed today. And again, I thank you very much for giving us this
I would
opportunity.
just add one thing to my brother, I'm not taking your time, I'm so sorry. But what is important about the war in Africa is that we need to understand that they never had the intention to stop any jihadists whatsoever, simply because French sent 5,000 men, I say 5,000 men, in a region as big as Iraq and Syria together. So they have all the power in the world, they can finish with the jihadists in no time with the weapons that they have, but they never had the intention to do so. So the region is way too big to send 5,000 people, is a joke. I don't want to take your time, but if you want me to speak 2 minutes, I don't mind, but I'm not taking your time. Oh, well, I introduce myself, I'm from Cameroon, but I'm not from Cameroon, I'm from everybody, I'm from the A people, like you were saying. And it's such a joy to be between you guys. I wanted to have that list around because I want to keep in touch with every one of you. I'm tired about the discourse, I don't want to lie to you, I'm really tired about the discourse. For one reason is that he said something very important, Kobena, today that touched my heart. I was so emotional when you were speaking, Sister Esther. Sister Ben is gone. What I want to say is action is the community. We cannot wait anything from anybody else but us. And all of us here, just the mere fact that we came there from 1 o'clock to 5 o'clock means we've got something to do. We have something to say. And I want concrete actions. I can spend hours talking about how upset I am about everything that is happening in the world now. It's not going to help us. What I want to do is concrete action, and I want that list, because I think we can do simple things about the community, each of us. First of all, I want us to have a march in London. When I say a march, it's not the Niger together, the Senegalese together, the Cameroonian together, the African together, all of us in one. So I wish Sister Bell was there to ask permission to this House of Parliament people to give us the right to work and get those t-shirts and let the people know what we're going through. Secondly, obviously, we all agree that education is the problem. The only things we need to do, education is with the miseducation is in the Western country and in Africa too. We should be sad in Africa to know that our own kids, some of them never seen Kunta Kinte. Some of them don't even know what it's all about. So how can Africans stand up together and talk about our own interests? We're not educated ourselves. And the same thing for education. Again, I'm talking about community. I'm sure in this room, I have about 5 or 6 people who can come with me, simply renting places where we can educate the youngest. When I say youngest, we know that they go through TikTok, YouTube, and all of that. They don't care about what we're doing. They're not here. Thank God I saw my young kid, blessing. But our kid and my kid and our generation, they're not going to come if we don't do party. So we need to let them come and say we're going to have dancing, clubbing, and in the middle of the club, we stop the music and we do 30-minute projection. And
the community to come together, and only us can do it. And the little thing will bring people to wake up and help us in our cause. Thank you.
Second up, my sister. We as parents need to educate our children.
Absolutely.
And by this kind of forum, educates us, and we can then educate our own.
Two parties first.
Thank you very much.
That's what I'd like to say briefly is that I didn't believe in the preparation of Pan-Africanism until I started with some research. And I don't want to get into that, but what I would like us to do here is to take a minute silence for those people in Black slaves who have been eradicated in Argentina, and to find some way to give those who remaining a voice. Because I haven't heard anyone talking about Argentina, what happened there with Black slaves. So we need to find some way Black Africans who have been executed and eradicated.
Yeah, thank you very much. We'll move on. There are many communities who have all been eradicated and experienced the same thing. That's why we call it the Maangamizi, to refer to all of that enslavement, that colonial period, the neo-colonials that we're facing today, because there are many names of people who are enslaved by the reality that we're in today, by the economic situation, by the housing situation, and we don't know their names. So we have to have these spaces so that we can educate ourselves properly in a collective fashion, like this said. We will have a minute silence, so that it does make sense, but we're going to pass it on to finish the program because we have 10 minutes before we have to vacate the room. There is a sheet going around the room. Please do also make sure that you fill that in. It will be going back to the APPGAR, and we'll also be in contact about positive action plans that we should all be engaged in to bring together these things. So next will be Kada. Shortly, for 2 minutes, and then we'll be back to the program.
No, sorry. Our call in Niger is right now there is a sanction on us, on our country, which is illegal. There is no legal basis from ECOWAS which authorize this kind of sanction. And we all know that France is behind this sanction. You know, France is always hiding behind ECOWAS to put sanction on leaders which are trying to defend the interests of their people. And those sanctions right now are having impact on the supply of essential food products, pharmaceutical, medical equipment, petroleum product, and electricity. Right now, most of the hospitals, they don't have electricity, so they cannot use the medical equipment, and people are dying in the hospital. Yes, and women who are they live there as well, they are not getting the help that they're supposed to get. So right now, we need everybody's support to condemn those illegal sanctions imposed on us illegally. Thank you very much.
So the final speaker for today's program is our elder, esteemed elder Kofi Mabuli-Klum, and that was many of us, and I'm also many of us, an educationist and Pan-Africanist, and he will be speaking on the ethics of Pan-African reparations.
Thank you. There's so much to say that every word that has been spoken here, it's like coming from deep down my guts. Particularly when these are people that I've worked with, over time. And it's not just me. It's interesting to know that we're in the 30th year since the 1993 Pan-Afrikan Reparations Conference in Abuja. And in that same year, we worked together with now ancestor Betty Grant to convene the African Reparations Movement's first conference in Birmingham. And over that period of time, I've seen many of the colleagues that I work with pass on. And and I wish that they were here to hear you all. The one thing I want to focus upon is really this question about putting money to our case for Pan-Afrikan Reparations. I feel deeply offended by that. And I feel offended particularly on behalf of those of my colleagues who 30 years ago we met in Birmingham and who are not yet alive today to hear you. And I feel offended because no amount of money can pay for the life of one of those colleagues of mine who passed, let alone the millions of our African people who since the first kidnapping of Africans from the shores of our continent have been perishing. No amount of money can pay for even one of those lives, let alone the millions. There is no amount of money to our case for reparatory justice. And that is why the most important thing for us as African people, the repair of relationships, that starts with the repair of our own person. And when I see this so-called learned people in the University of the West Indies, people in government, without us sitting and making deals with our enemies of today,
Sure.
about paying them money
Sure.
for lives that are worth a lot more than their own wretched, stupid lives.
Sure. Talking.
Putting, figures of money to African lives and says that this is what you have to pay us in government.
Accepting money.
That is the most offensive thing that none of us should tolerate. Because anybody who tolerates it is implicated in the continuing genocide against
Do well.
our world and everything in it that humanity has built belongs to all of us. Those who lay claim to it as their private property are part of the problem. They are the criminals we have to actually expropriate in order to effect the reparatory justice redistribution of wealth, so that each and every human being is capable of living a decent human life on this planet. And that is the objective of reparatory justice. In the times, as Sister Esther has said, our ancestors in ancient Kemet, thousands of years ago, had a concept of Seruj Ta. Reparations is nothing new that the United Nations can teach us. Or let alone these miserable, demented brains in the University of West Indies can claim that they can lecture any of us for. Reparations is about repairing us in honor to ancestors who didn't have that chance. So that those yet to be born will not live like us and know that they owe a better life that they will be living in the future to the sacrifices of those who have gone before and those of us living today. And it is for no reason that APPGAR emphasized that for us as Africans, ours as societies, of those who have passed on into the realms of our ancestors, those who are living today, and those yet to come. And I'm saying those who sit down to be talking figures, quantum, in whose name are they speaking?
In a fidel.
Which of our ancestors asked them, to put a price to their lives? Which of our ancestors asked them to put a price to what they suffered? And go and read the annals of what we went through. Not only during the period of chattel enslavement, but during the period of direct colonization. But also, let us look at what African people and the poorest of the poor across races are going through today. Who can pay for the children who are being lost in the hospitals in Niger today because of so-called sanctions? One child who is being lost. What is the price? And that is why it comes back to this question of miseducation. Because there are people strutting around as PhD holders, academics, intellectuals, particularly those from our own communities, who are passed through, processes that lobotomize them to rob them of their brains.
Yes.
And then they come up with certificates claiming that they are academics.
Yes.
We should worship them because a white master has given you some certificate.
Yes. Yes.
And then they can sit down and put prices to lives that they're not worthy of. So let's get it very clear. There is an ethics to our Pan-African reparations.
Yes.
And that ethics is dictated by systems of ancestors that are still valid for today. Ma'at,
Yes. Yes.
Ubuntu,
Yes.
which spells out simply that I am a human being only because my life makes other human beings' lives worth living. And this, let me emphasize this, has been called racist. Those of us racialized as non-white, those of us racialized as white, we are not human beings if we don't respect other human beings.
Yes. Yes.
If we don't respect the life in other human beings. And that is what needs to be repaired. Is that sense of learning to see humanity in each and every human being and be humble enough to know that this process of the Maangamizi or the Wetiko has taken something human
away from each and every one of us.
Yes.
And we need all of us together to work on recovering our common humanity.
Yes.
Because the way we relate to each other, and for those, Africans or black people who think that, it's all about people racialized as white.
Yes.
I challenge you, the way you live your everyday life, are you being human to your neighbor? Are you being human enough to your neighbor? Let us learn once again to live the lives of true human beings who respect the God that is in each and every human being. And from repairing whatever is in us that makes us inadequate as human beings, we can, as our African women put it into a slogan, in APPGAR-L, we lift each other as we are. For me, the challenge of Pan-Afrikan Reparations is how can we restore each and every one, each and every community of us, to that point where life becomes worth living only when you look around you and other human beings are doing actually even better than us. And that is if we don't get this, then the ethics of reparations that the likes of Maangamizi has written about, which goes back to what thousands of years ago our ancestors who sat in ancient, Kemet or ancient Egypt worked out Ma'at, because they looked beyond their lives at that time and saw us come and saw the encounters we would have, which would rob us of humanity. And that is why we must, if we go out from this room without a commitment to, as the sister said, take some task of practical action, where you can, even in conversations with other people in your mosques, in your churches, in your schools, colleges, universities, in your places of entertainment, find time, have conversations. How human are we living? With respect to each other. And then, how human is the surroundings, the environment in which we are. And from there, we can begin to organize, to do things for ourselves, where as individuals, but more importantly, as collectives of people, we are supporting each other to restore humanity. And that is how we rehumanize the world. And that is the greatest honor that we can do to our ancestors. That is what reparations ought to be about. Yes, some of these things will cost money. But the money that is needed for our repair work on ourselves and on our communities, that money, which has no particular figure, has to be found, one, from the wealth created by many generations of ancestors of which we have been robbed. The wealth being created today by the poorest of the poor, who are not getting enough in terms of wages and salaries for the wealth that they are creating because it's been taken away from them. And the wealth that we can yet create when we have just repaired relationships with each other and therefore repair the entire world. Africa cannot be taken back from where we are today. We've learned bitterly through the murder of some of our best daughters and sons how to stand now and ensure that no more blood of ours is spilled in vain. And in 1945, when our ancestors met at the 5th Pan-Afrikan Congress, they said something, which today we must drum louder to everybody. Unless African people are supported to lead humanity back to rehumanizing ourselves and the entire world, we will destroy this world along with those who want to destroy it. That message should sound very, very clear to everybody right now, because we've had enough of this. We've had enough of the oppression. We've had enough of the dehumanization. We only want to live as human beings. Thank you.
So that concludes the session. And that was the last speaker. I would go through our crew. The sort of Maangamizi details and session very important. The session does now have to come to a close with the plan, despite the plan breakout. So we have to be out here before 5. There's a sheet that went round.
I've got it here, sorry, I'm just, because the first page is filled, so I'm just making
Yeah, on the
copies of
back,
that.
please. And please do bring that sheet back to the front. It's about the question that the sister raised about what is our positive action steps forward. This meeting won't be effective if, apart from sending very clear message to our brothers and sisters on the continent who are in struggle, we don't commit ourselves to practical actions that are going to enable our communities not only to get to grips with the sort of the information that's here, but also with what we also have to do and what this time compels us to. If our people's struggles are truly being amplified around the world, then it's going to be because we take it into all of those places and we act accordingly. Because taking back our wealth also means the end of this system as we know. And that's a very different education from the one we have. So the plan will be to follow up with those on the sheets, those sign-ups, that we can contact each of you and follow up to start setting the construction plan. As part of the building of our very own educational complex, which is our own sovereign way of building education that's actually going to live. So please do look out for that contact. It's important that that's the next step to take. As part of this has also been as part of reparation season, so you can follow that hashtag online, post and share it. The next event for reparation season is actually the solidarity action of the Majority World International Solidarity Coordinating Council of Community Resistance, which will be in Brixton on the 14th of October for Indigenous Peoples' Day of Resistance, which is actually on the 12th, commemorating Indigenous Peoples' Day of Resistance as an annual commemoration of Indigenous peoples around the world. Then the 19th of October, which is back here, which will be back here, which is an APPGAR session, Commission of Inquiry for Truth and Reparatory Justice session, promoting the Ubuntudunia People's Tribunal, International People's Tribunal for Global Justice. After the 19th, there is then the International Conference on Reparations on the 23rd and 22nd of October. This will be an international conference being held at a friend's house in London, which is opposite Euston Station, being supported by the Quakers, where we will again be facilitating dialogue with numbers into the concrete objectives of not only securing that all parts of Parliamentary Group on African reparations, but our forward steps towards securing that Commission of Inquiry. And that's really, really important because this session is very much under threat and under attack from the establishment. They don't want us to be able to gather in spaces like this. And this all-party parliamentary group on African reparations, which was won on the back of many generations that struggle, depends literally on a cross-section of MPs, members of Parliament, in this country to be on the Secretariat or to support the chairing of the APPGAR. And so that also requires taking this into our communities to educate them on the importance of the spaces that we're winning in our local constituencies, at home, to your local elected officials. And this is really the theme of continuing to promote reparations. So please look out for the contacts and information, and giving thanks not only to all of you, but to the internet, those who are convened internationally online, who are viewing from different parts of the world, and those who have joined in calls and conversations, but also fundamentally to our ancestors and the freedom fighters to whom we owe today, to whom we owe tomorrow, and the future time that we walk this land on this earth. Thank you very much once again. Please do pass that sheet back, and then any questions will come up to us. I shake my hand.
Events that are coming up, the Wednesday 19th October event will be a focus on the Ribeiro, the Nama, and other indigenous communities connected to this international indigenous people's resistance day. We are going to be meeting here, we're going to be hearing what reparations is like for our indigenous communities. And of course, the Kilobolas, the Alekes, the Maroon communities, we will hear from them as communities. And hopefully at that time some of us will shut up. The conference in the 21st and 22nd in Friends House is also very important. It's a 2-day conference to allow room again for us to hear more from you than some of us. And therefore we should register in good time so that those who really want to make something concrete out of it, will be able to do so. Thank you all for coming.
Should we take a photo?
Yes.
We'll take the picture outside. Okay. If everyone can make their way to the front, so that we can take the picture. Can everyone come to the front, please, for a great picture, please?
You remember that? I forgot. All right, cool. No worries.
I think everyone get around there. I think,
Sorry, can everyone come to the front so we can take a group picture if you would like to be in it, because we have to be out of here now, literally. I don't know whose idea it was, but whose idea? Okay, cool. If everyone could just go by the main wall and just go behind just here, please. Okay. Does anyone else want to be in this picture? Yeah, we're limited for time, so just please, Okay, if we can go closer together, yep. I don't want to be here. I'm alright. I'll get you guys, I'll get the... Alright. It's alright.
Okay, okay, can everyone see me? I'm going to take one from the camera and one on the phone. 3, 2.
What about the children? Why?
You know what? Come on, children, come. Come on. Yeah, see, let's take a picture. Okay. They can let them come in the front. Let them be at the front. Yeah. Come on, everybody. Come on. Yes, everybody, quickly. We're limited for time. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to take one on the phone. 3, 2, 1. I'm going to take one on the camera. Okay, 3, 2, 1. One for luck. Thank you. It's all right. Sorry. Thank you. You too. Thank you.